Today we're checking out bass drum microphones and some of the common bass drum mics that you're going to find on a bass drum. These are some techniques that are quite common in a studio setting. You might only use one mic on your bass drum right now, and that's totally cool. But today we're going to check out a few other microphones that might help you get a more full and rich sound out of your bass drum recordings. So a lot of times when you see a drum kit in a professional studio setting, the bass drum usually has more than one microphone on it. Each one of these microphones is picking up a different element of the drum, and it's contributing to the overall sound of the bass drum. When it comes time to mixing those drums, you're going to have options on blending those microphones. You're going to be able to sculpt the sound a little bit easier, and you're going to have more control over the overall sound if you have different tone options. So usually the best placement for if you only have one microphone is going to be right inside the porthole of the bass drum. And this is going to capture a good amount of snap from the bass drum beater. And it's also going to capture the low end from the bass drum. It's a good general placement. Now there's other placements that you can do with one microphone. Like you could put it outside of the porthole a little bit. You could put it halfway inside the porthole a little bit further, halfway between the batter head and the resonant head. Or you could put it all the way almost up to the batter head if you want a lot of snap and beater attack from your bass drum. It's going to depend what kind of sound you want and what kind of music you're recording. So here's my inside dynamic microphone, and it is a Beyerdynamic M88 dynamic microphone. There are many options for a microphone that you can use in this position. So I have it about halfway between the resonant head of the bass drum and the batter head. And I have it pointing halfway between the beater of the bass drum and the shell of the bass drum. I'm going to use this mic mainly for the beater sound of my bass drum. The most common microphone that you'd add next would be a microphone that's going to mic the front of the bass drum resonant head. The most common type of microphone to use in this case would be a large diaphragm condenser mic. Famous studios, you're going to see a Neumann U47. The point of this mic is to capture low end and the low mid frequencies of the bass drum. You're not going to get a lot of beater snap from the sound, but you're going to get a lot of the low and subby sound of the bass drum. These microphones are quite expensive, but there are tons of U47 clone mics on the market. So here's the outside condenser microphone, and this is the Warm Audio WA47 Junior. And you can see I have it placed about 3 inches away from the resonant head. You can experiment by moving it further back from the bass drum. Be aware that if you move it further back, you're going to capture more mic bleed from cymbals or possibly from other instruments in the room. If you do move this microphone back, you might want to consider building a kick tunnel, which is basically a moving blanket that you attach to the bass drum and that you tent over the microphone to reject the bleed from other instruments or from cymbals. So I usually put this mic a little bit off center of the drum. I find that usually gets the best sound with the most low end. This microphone sounds excellent when it's paired with the inside kick mic. Blended together, you get a really full bass drum sound. The next mic that you could add in place of a large diaphragm condenser would be a sub-kick mic. And this is basically a speaker that is rewired backwards so that it turns it into a microphone, so it's picking up sound. People used to take Yamaha NS10 monitor cones and turn them around and mount them in front of a bass drum. But the one I'm using today is a sub-kick made by Solomon called the Low Freak. The sub mic does only pick up for the super low end frequencies. This could be a good, this could be a bad thing, depending on what kind of music you're recording. Here's the Low Freak. Turn this around, you can see the speaker cone right there. So I usually put this quite close to the bass drum, maybe about an inch away, an inch or two. I usually try to line up the bass drum sub mic and the outside condenser mic so they're in phase. Phase is super important when you add more microphones to the bass drum sound. Some other microphones that do contribute to the bass drum sound are going to be the other microphones that are on your drum set. The overhead mics are going to play a role in sort of the texture and ambience of your overall bass drum sound, especially the room mics. Like I said before, this depends on the style that you're recording. The room mics are going to be a huge contributor to the texture and air and depth of your bass drum sound. So there you go. There are a few different bass drum miking ideas for you. You don't need all these microphones. It's not necessary. If you have one microphone and you place it well, that's going to be just as good as using all these microphones. But maybe you record drums remotely and you want to give people you're working with more sound options. This could be a good approach to things. So if there are some mics or some really great miking ideas that you use on your bass drum recordings, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.